Hi, Jamie here. I wanted to make a video today to document and share my experiences with Alice in Wonderland syndrome. If you're not familiar with Alice in Wonderland syndrome, it's a condition that mostly affects small children and mostly males, actually, as far as I remember. And it will cause them usually during having a sickness or a very high fever, to have hallucinations. They call it Alice in Wonderland syndrome because they theorize that Lewis Carroll had it, because it can also alter your perception of depth. Specifically, things can look very, very far away or very, very small, kind of like when Alice is looking up at the table trying to get the key, or pushing her feet through the cottage doors, this sort of thing. That this syndrome also causes you to have that kind of depth perception problem. So I wanted to just share a little bit about how my children and how they have exhibited these things. So this started in China. My son was probably about 5 or 6 when we first arrived there, and when we first arrived from the United States, they put us in kind of a transitional housing place, but we wanted to find a permanent residence. And the first apartment that we found, I look back and realize that it was probably covered with mold everywhere. It's the year that I also got very, very sick. My son also got very, very sick. In fact, when I was getting very sick, and I realized at a certain point in this apartment, something is attacking me. I'm getting so sick. My hair was coming out in chunks in the shower, and I was covered with psoriasis, and I was getting so sick so often. I remember sitting in the bed just thinking, something's attacking me. I'm going to move out of this bedroom. I've moved to my son's bedroom, and it got 10 times worse. So I really think that his bedroom was a huge part of the problem. Sometimes we would come back from trips, and this apartment, things would be covered in like a little mist of mold. It was just a petri dish. So I really think that's why my son got so sick there so often, and I'm so grateful that we got out of there. So what happened is that my son was sick, and I put him to bed, and basically he came into our room late in the middle of the night, and he was absolutely hysterical. And it wasn't fun or funny at all. It was horrifying and very scary. He was talking about people after him, darkness and horribleness, and like torture and just awful things. It's been a while, so I don't remember the specifics, but it was incredibly scary as a parent to have to hear your child talk about these things. And I could tell that he wasn't there. I could tell that he was not even noticing that I was there, which was equally as scary. And as much as I've done this work and I've been lucid and talked to entities and, face to face and all these things, I immediately thought to myself, okay, brace yourself, Jamie. This is day 1 of the rest of your life with a son that's schizophrenic, because it was not pleasant at all, and I was very scared. But he did settle down, and we got him to calm down, and we got him to kind of come back to us. And that was the one start of what happened over the course of up till now. He still experiences it, although it's not quite as intense. And what's coupled with it is this depth perception issue. So he'll explain it to me now that he's sort of got a grip of it, that he's like, as he's talking to me, he says to me, "Mom, you're really, really far away from me right now." And he'll say things like, he'll feel like, and quiet, I guess, like extreme quietness can sound really, really loud to him during these moments. And at first it was really scary, and especially when he was young, we had to really work with him, but he's got a grip on it now. And it actually happens maybe once a month where he sort of has this experience, mostly at night, and he's got a grip on it, so it's not quite as scary for him, and he can kind of discuss it and work through it, and it's been okay. So then flash to over the holidays, I think early January, my daughter was sick, and she had a fever, and I put her to bed, And I just, you know, as a parent, you're just like, okay, I'm just come get me if you need me kind of a thing. I'm going to keep an eye on you. And I went to bed and it was probably about 10:30. And around 11:30 or midnight, I woke up to the sound of a man screaming, yelling. And he was yelling from my daughter's room, and he was yelling, "Put it down." And it was so stern and like authoritative. "Put it down." And I heard him yell it 3 times, and I bolt out of bed and I dart to her room immediately, and I'm bracing myself to see someone in her room because it was clearly coming from her room, and she's asleep and nothing's going on in her room. And I thought to myself, what's happening? I know what I heard. And I just kind of took a step back and I just sort of went back to bed. But I knew that I heard it, and I knew that it wasn't a dream. I mean, I've heard things in my sleep, of course, a lot, and it just felt very real. So to have nobody there was very alarming. Even more alarming than somebody being there. It was equally as alarming not to see that there wasn't somebody there because it was so real. So I went to bed, and about half an hour later, my daughter runs into my room, wakes me up, and is hysterical. She's shaking, she's crying, and she says, "Tell the man to stop yelling at me. Tell him to stop yelling at me. He's yelling at me." And she's kind of doing that shaky thing like kids do, where they're just kind of like, and she's kind of covering her ears, and she's, "Tell him to stop, tell him to stop." And I'm like, what man, what is he saying? Like, talk to me, just calm down. And she says, "He's saying, take it down, take it down." And instantly I just thought, oh my gosh, that's the same voice that I heard from her room. So I calmed her down, and I'm realizing in my head that this is a shared experience. This is probably a little bit more legitimate, and I didn't know what we were dealing with, to be honest with you. So I had her sleep with me, and it happened a few more times that night. I didn't ever hear it again, but she did hear him yelling other things. Other random things too. I wish I'd remembered. I'd have to ask her. There's something incredibly random that he said, almost like a parent would say. So it felt very like an authoritative figure. But anyways, so eventually one of these times the dog starts growling like at the wall. I'm really scared at this point, and I wake up my son, and I'm just like, okay, that's it, I can't handle this, we're gonna all have like a camp out together. And of course he's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, I could have done without knowing about this. So that next day she did have a fever again. Actually, I don't think she even had a fever, but she did hallucinate 2 or 3 more times, and it's really scary. I mean, the things that she talks about and the way that she structured her sentences aren't anything that I think she would ever really bring about on her own. Talking about that there was basically a portal that opened up into her bedroom, and there was like these dark entities coming at her, and it's not even that coherent of what I'm saying now. It's just through this hysterical, like panting, like can't stop shaking, and I talked about this and all these things, and it's really scary. And it happened about 2 or 3 more times over the course of the next couple days. So I just think it's so interesting. Certainly not fun in a lot of ways, but I wanted to share it with the channel just to make it documented and get your thoughts on that. It's kind of a fun story. Actually, I wanted to also mention, I asked her if she ever saw him, this man, and she said no. And a couple days later I said, well, what if you had to describe him? What would he look like if you had to describe him? And she had a very detailed description of this gentleman. She said, well, Mom, his hair's dark black, but it's like wet, and he kind of slicks it back a little bit, like he's like, you know, and it kind of, what in my mind I'm thinking she's talking about hair gel of some kind going back. She's like, I don't know, it looks like there's water in it. And then she said he's got a mustache like that kind of curls up, which I don't even know if she's familiar with that, but anyways. And then also she mentioned his collar, that something funny was going on with his collar. So yeah, very interesting. Another thing to note is that over the next month or so, I was trying to find a portal in the woods. That's something that I do right? And I was in trance, and I was asking, like, where's the portal? And a voice very clearly said, it's down the hall. Like, duh. I'm not sure if I mentioned that on the channel before, but my daughter's room is right by the hall. And it was a few nights after that that my son and I both woke up. We met together at the end of the hall. Like, he woke up, I woke up at the same time somehow, and we both met each other at the end of the hall. And we looked at each other like, what is going on? Because it was just so obvious that somebody was there that shouldn't have been there. I'm like, what do you think's going on? He's like, I don't know. Somebody's here that's not supposed to be here. I feel it. I can sense it. And I'm like, I know, me too. I can't believe it. Like, it's so obvious and so palpable. It was really scary for a couple months, to be honest. I never was 100% scared because I know, like, I have my confidence and I have my authority in myself and my space, and I know I'm protected. That's fine. But it is unnerving to have these experiences in their own way. So I think about that hallway sometimes. And I think it was that next morning that I asked Nathan, how would you describe, like, this person that was in our house last night? He's like, I think he works for, like, a circus, a carnival. And it made me think of the mustache man. I don't know. So anyways, that is that. This is a little bit longer, but I hope that you're doing well. Please do comment. Let me know anything you think about that. And I hope you're doing well. I'll talk to you soon.